Okay, let's get to our next segment here. This is a really interesting one, Harmon. You were the one that actually came up with it, and I thought it was super fitting because yesterday I had a fantasy baseball draft, and it took 4 hours. It's my big league that I'm always talking about. 20 team league. I got a really good team. But anyways, so it was auction draft, right? And you get an auction budget. For those that don't know, it doesn't matter that it's baseball, whatever sport, right? You get X amount of dollars and you have to draft the best team possible with those dollars. So me personally, I'm looking for the best value ads. I'm looking for guys that maybe are going to go for less money, but I'm not going to, I'm going to get a lot of value out of what they're doing on the field, right? So it was interesting you brought it up because I've had value like this on my mind for a while now because I was preparing for this draft. And the idea you came up with was for us to figure out who's had the most surplus value for the Vancouver Canucks. Cap Friendly has this cost per point chart, which is helpful, provides some context, and shows us that in terms of how much the Canucks are paying for each point that the player is scoring, that Dakota Joshua, Niels Höglander are the most valuable, and then Sam Lafferty, Pia Studer, Teddy Bluger, Phil Giuseppe. You're going to see a lot of bottom six players on that list, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are the most valuable. So you and I have thought about, okay, how could we move this in the direction of figuring out, with all the context that we have, not just their goal scoring and their point production, who has been the most valuable Canuck in terms of what they're paying and what they're getting from the player. And I love that you came up with this idea because I've got a list now. Are we doing top five, Harm?
Sure. I've got 10. I've ranked my
Whoa,
top 10 actually.
top 10. Okay, well, I'll give you
Well,
my five,
you
and
know what's
then you
crazy?
just go 6 to 10.
Sure, but you know what's crazy is in years past it would have been the opposite. What are the worst surplus value contracts? Like if we did this exercise last year, we would have had what, like 3 contracts? We would have had maybe 4 actually. You would have had Hughes, Pedersen, Demko, and Kuzmenko.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kuzmenko would have been leading the pack by like a pretty
Oh
significant
yeah.
margin. Pretty significant margin at that. But this year, I don't have one of those big stars at the top. I have Dakota Joshua at number one.
Interesting. I had Hoglander just because if you exclude ELC players, he has the second best goal scoring rate relative to cap hit in the NHL. And I think you could make a case that based off Hoglander's top 6 impact lately, that he's played closer to a $4.5 million rate. But Joshua's not bad either. I actually had him quite a ways. This is the difficult part of actually doing this exercise. Is I think everyone's so packed in that Joshua was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was 7th on my list.
Wow, seventh. I didn't even go to seven. I only have five. Okay, so I'm going to tell you why I have Joshua number one, and I do have Nils Höglander number two, but I'll explain why I have Joshua number one here. And it really comes down to what the Canucks haven't been able to do since he's been out of the lineup and what he was doing for the Canucks when he was in the lineup. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Nils Höglander. There's a reason I have him at number two. Like, he's been great. I think it's really a flip flop. But I'm surprised you have Joshua at seventh because not only does he lead them in points per dollar, like he's produced the most for what he's paid, but this is a guy that kills penalties. This is a guy that's all over the lineup, right? Like, he's playing everywhere you need him to. He's playing in multiple situations. And I think just the hit that the team's taken since he's gone down with this hand injury at the start of February, I think that shows that if we were just doing a straight MVP rankings, Harm, like, I think Joshua comes up higher than Höglander on the MVP rankings. And then I also think, okay, well, Joshua makes less money than Höglander as well. So that's why I have Joshua at number one.
See, I think that's where we disagree. I think Hoglander's been more valuable,
Hmm,
especially because of what he's done in the top 6 lately. Like, imagine what Vancouver's top 6 looks like going into the playoffs if Hoglander is a decent fourth liner, but that's it, right? Like, he's
sure.
somebody that can score on the fourth line. And it's not just that he's producing, it's now the underlying numbers are, especially since the All-Star break, are really sparkling for him. And like the math for me with Joshua was, I sort of looked at, I'm rating him this season as like a high end third liner. That's the level that he's played at. And if you go through like 32 teams times 6 forwards, that's 192 forwards. So you would peg him somewhere around the 200th, most valuable forward in the NHL. Very rough back of the napkin math. And so if you look at the 200 ranked forward for NHL forward in cap it, that's around 3.5 million, which is around 2.5 million of surplus. Whereas I think you can make a case that this year Hoaglander's been worth close to what Ilya Mikheyev should have been, like around $4.5 million. But again, I think that's just the discrepancy there, and I get where you're coming from with Joshua. And again, that's why this exercise is fun, is because there's such a thin margin separating all these guys.
Who do you have at number 2? That's what I'm really curious about. Because at number 3, I'll just say at number 3, I have Quinn Hughes. And not to jump the gun too much, but I think, look, we know what he's getting paid. We know he's underpaid because they signed him long term when he was younger. I have Quinn Hughes at number 3, but who do you have at 2? And then tell us who you have at 3 as well.
I have Hughes at number 2.
Mm.
If you just look at Erik Karlsson's the highest paid defenseman at 11.5. You subtract that from Hughes at what, 7.85, and that's more than $3.5 million in surplus value. So I've got Hughes 2, and then I've got Demko 3.
Demko 3. I like that. So Thatcher Demko at 5 million. I actually have Demko at number 5. I've got JT Miller at number 4. And I know JT Miller makes $8 million, but the way he's playing this year, and even when it comes to cost per point, like he's right up there. I mean, it goes Elias Pettersson and then JT Miller and then Quinn Hughes in terms of cost per point. But I just think everything else that JT Miller's done, like JT Miller's been this team's matchup center this year. He's done everything for them. I've got JT Miller ahead of him at number 4.
Yeah, the reason I had Demko ahead of Miller, and I don't have Miller that much lower, I think I have Miller 1, 2, 3, 4. I have him at 6. Is because I looked at Connor Hellebuck on his next extension.
Mm.
As next season, he's going to be making $8.5 million, and that's actually a discount relative to what, for example, Andrei Vasilevsky makes. And for most of the season, Demko has paced with Hellebuck. So you go 8.5 minus five, that's about $3.5 million in surplus value. Whereas with Miller, he's been exceptional, but it's just that and I think Miller has arguably been more valuable than Demko this year if you were to just rank pure performance and value to this team. But he's got a much higher cap hit at 8 million there, and he's 10th in NHL scoring. And if you're trying to make a case that he's $3 or $3.5 million, that he's been worth $3 to $3.5 million more than his actual cap hit, then you're getting into the territory of, he's been worth 11.5 million, which, I mean, it's close, but I don't think he's quite there.
Okay, I'm trying to make up the rest of my list as well, because I also want to try to go to 10. So I'm curious who you have in the rest of your list. I have Pettersson at 5. Pettersson was my 5th, and I did end it there, but I'm trying to come up with it on the fly because I think that's going to be a lot of fun to kind of go all the way to 10.
Yeah, one sec here. Sorry, I had Miller 5th, not 6th.
Okay.
So just to recap, I got Höglander 1, Hughes 2, Demko 3, and then I've got Phil Pronik 4th. And the reason is he's a $4.4 million top pair right side defenseman. It's rare to find that type of player making that type of impact. And I know he gets the Quinn Hughes bump for sure. But even factoring that in, again, like a top pair right-handed defenseman for under $4.5 million, that's tough value to beat.
That's fair enough. And I do have Hronek on my list as well. And it's so funny. It's interchangeable. But I'm going to ask you about one guy. You can give me the rest of your list. I'm going to ask you about one guy. Noah Juulsen. Where do you have him? Like, he's on
I don't
your
have
list?
him.
Okay,
I don't
so you
have
made
him
a
in the
mistake.
top 10.
Yeah, it's fine. You don't have to be right all the time. Juulsen is absolutely a top 10 most valuable player for the team. And to reiterate the exercise, because I think there's some people in the YouTube live chat, and when we post this on YouTube, there's going to be some people in the comment section not understanding the exercise. We are trying to determine who is the Canucks, most valuable players based on what they are being paid compared to what they're putting out. So to reiterate, we've got guys like Dakota Joshua. Nils Höglander is at the top of both of our lists with what he's done. Quinn Hughes as well. All these guys there. I think Noah Juulsen, who's making league minimum, Harmon, he's got to be on your list.
No, zero chance. Zero chance.
Come
I'll
on.
list all 10 because here's the thing. He's a number 6-7 defenseman, and he's been a good number 6-7 defenseman. But guess what? The whole point of league minimum salaries is because that's what you typically pay number 6-7 defensemen.
He's been a 5'6" defenseman for this
No,
team,
he
let's be
hasn't.
honest.
He
He has
hasn't.
been. At times this year, he has been. He's had to be, and
At
he has
times,
been.
but also if you look at the early part of the season, you can't ignore that he had the low periods there too. Like, don't get me wrong,
Absolutely.
I like Noah Juleson. I think it's not so much that I haven't liked what he's done relative to his contract, because it's a good contract. It's just that this team has so many other contributors higher up the lineup. Like, look at, after Miller at 5, I've got Pedersen at 6, Joshua at 7, and then you get to like Pia Suter, right? For $1.6 million, he's been a Swiss Army knife all over your lineup. He can play second line, third line, wing, center. I'd argue he's provided more surplus value than Noah Juleson, even Brock Besser. Guy scoring, he's on pace for 42 goals, making just over $6.5 million. I think he's provided more surplus value than Juleson as well. I'd even argue Carson Soucy. Like, he's outperformed his
Oh, come on.
$3.25 million cap hit.
Yeah, he has. I do have all those guys that you who okay, give us your top 10. I need to see where we're disagreeing here. Give us it in order,
Okay.
your top 10.
Nils Höglander 1, Quinn Hughes number 2, Thatcher Demko 3, Philip Hronek 4, JT Miller 5, Elias Pettersson 6, Dakota Joshua 7, Pia Suter 8, Brock Besser 9, Carson Soucy 10.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I think Suter's the only guy I don't have on my list. I have Juleson at 10. I don't have Suter on my list at all.
Okay,
I think
that's a bad take.
It's not a bad take. It's a vibes take. And sign up,
He
we're
makes
getting a lot of feedback in the
1.6.
chat now. We're getting a lot of feedback in the chat now, which I really like. Someone brought up that OEL would be number 1. Logan Van Dyke said in Florida, OEL's number 1
Oh,
on
yeah.
surplus value, except they're not having these conversations in Florida. Karin said Hronek at 4 is wild. His play in the second half has really disappointed me. And look, like, Hronek splits in the first half compared to the second half of the season are pretty undeniable. And another thing from practice today, Harm, that we didn't even bring up was that Hronek's back with Hughes. Like, Hronek is right back with Hughes. We saw him hold down a pair on his own for one game, and he's right back with Hughes. So, again, the Quinn Hughes merchant allegations, don't know if Hronek's going to be beating those anytime soon.
Yeah, okay, maybe I can see the case for bumping Hronek down a little bit. But again, how many legit top pair, especially right shot defensemen, are you going to find under $4.5 million?
Yeah, fair enough. I just don't know if it's number 4. Like,
Sure.
I
Okay.
think you're omitting some decent names there, and Noah Juleson's one of them.
I can understand the case for maybe bumping Hronek below Miller, Pedersen, Joshua. I'll on the fly, I'll agree with that.
Okay. Charlie Cole. It always comes back to Juleson, Sinochik. Quads uses vibes and Harm uses logic. Karin, I would like to compare this to Quads from last year, who was ready to send Noah Juleson to the moon. And it is absolutely true. I did flip flop quite a bit on the Juleson take, but he was bad last year. He was bad. He was good this year.
Actually, he was good last year. It was the start of this season where, we were all in agreement that Noah Juleson should not be playing at that time. We were all ready to send him to the moon, but credit to him and the coaching staff. But he's still not. I still think it's insane. I've at least admitted that, okay, Hronek at number 4 was a bit too high. He should be bumped down. I was wrong about that. But you cannot have Noah Juleson on that list ahead of Pia Suter.
I can, though. I can and I will, right? Like, that's the thing you don't know about me.
Crazy, dude.
And that's, it's tough though, because on this cap friendly list that we were looking at earlier, Pia Suter is 4th on the Canucks in points per dollar. So yeah, might be hard to defend that. Dollars per point, excuse me.
Yeah, like 26 points in 58 games, but more than that, his 2A and defensive metrics are among some of the best among all Canuck forwards.
It's Jacoby. Quads, what round of the playoffs do the Canucks need to reach for you to get a Noah Juleson jersey hung up in your office? We'll see. We'll see about that one day, but not today.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.